Good afternoon, everyone. Slim Jim here. Today we are doing a comparison video. We're doing the 2019 Hobie Outback versus the Scout boats. So we have the 430. We also have the smaller version, the 365. Let's talk about dimensions first. So first we have our 365. The 365 is 12 feet long. The 430 over here is 14 feet long. And the kayak is 12.5 feet long. I've been asked many times what I like about the kayak and what I like about the Scout, and if I'm looking to get onto the water, which should I purchase type of deal. So I figured I'd make a comparison video. Today is Christmas Eve, so if you are watching afterwards, I hope you had a fantastic Christmas Eve. And if you're watching on Christmas Eve, I hope it's exciting for you. Let's talk about weight. Now, both the 430 and the 365, the boats themselves, they weigh 60 pounds. Even the longer one with the 2 extra feet, it's about 62 pounds. It's like an extra 2 pounds, nothing crazy. And now for the kayak, the Outback weighs 82 pounds. And that's just the bare minimum. That's not counting the wheels. Same thing for the boats. That's just the boat. That's not counting the aluminum seats and no accessories. So it's just the floor and the actual boat. Next order of business, I'm gonna talk about the setup time. So we'll start with the kayak. The kayak is already, bam, it's in one solid form. So you don't have to inflate it like you do the Scout boats. So all you would have to do is put your tackle on it, take it to the water, and you'll be good to go. Now the Scout boats, you have to inflate it because obviously it's inflatable. Now when you inflate it, they'll take about 10 to 15 minutes tops. You can use a foot pump, which comes with your boat already, or you can buy an electric pump. Now I have 2 electric pumps that I use. I'll link them down in the description. I highly recommend them. I'm gonna show you the main one I use here at home, and then I'll put up an image on the screen of the other one I use while I'm at the water. So this is the one I use here at home. It's a Mega Max. It's a wall plug-in, unlike my other one that you have to connect onto a 12-volt battery. Now this one has a lot of power. It doesn't give a firm pressure on the boat, but it pumps it up very quickly, adds a lot of air in the pontoons. The other pump I use to pressurize it, make sure everything is nice and solid. You have 3 separate chambers, pontoon, and the floor. All these are separate chambers, so you have 3 chambers total. Same thing with the Scout 430. The floor is separate, and same with both pontoons are also separate. Now the kayak, obviously it's not inflatable. You have nothing to pump up. It's very thick, bulky, heavy-duty plastic. Setup time for the kayak, for me, takes about 5 minutes tops. I pull it out, put it on the wheels, put my rods inside, and wheel it out to the water, and that takes about 5-ish minutes. Now the Scout 430 and the Scout 365, I will sometimes take it inflated, or I'll keep it rolled up in a bag. When I pump it up, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes tops. And then while it is pumping up, I'm also adding accessories to it. So as it's inflating, I'm putting gear and stuff inside. After all said and done, I probably spend about 20 minutes total setting it up. So about 10 minutes inflating, and then another 10 minutes putting my outboard on, putting some fishing gear inside, and setting up fish finders and other fun accessories. Next up on the list, we're going to talk about storage and transportation. So for me, I own 3 Scout inflatable boats. I have 2 430s and 1 365. They all roll up in a bag. However, I don't use a bag anymore. I now store them on the side of the house in a giant outdoor box. I roll them up as tight as I can, and then I stick them in sideways like this, and the accessories, floor, then I just pull the tarp over so when it rains, nothing gets wet, everything stays dry and organized, and it doesn't look all cluttery. Now for storage for the kayak, it's very bulky, so I can't roll it up, and it's very hard to move around. Storage is not ideal, but I make do with what I have. I'll store it sideways, sitting on the ground. I probably should have it lifted up off the ground, as other people tell me, because it eroded away some of the plastic after bumping against the wall or the floor a few times. But for right now, I just sitting on the side of the wall. So we talked about storage. Let's move on to transportation. Josh, how do I get my kayak or my Scout from home to the harbor easily? I don't have a big car. I don't have a truck like you. Well, you know, that is not a problem. So with the Scouts, they roll up and fit in a little bag. Sorry, there's a drone right above me. The boats roll up and fit in a little bag. It'll take a little bit of getting used to. When you first do it, most people just roll it up as you would a newspaper. And when you roll it up like that, it kind of spreads out and it's all floppy and it doesn't fit in the bag. Now, that's just the boat. You also have to take in consideration you have accessories. So basic boat accessory. You have the seats. You have the paddles, which I need to go grab. Ba-bam! Look what I got. So these paddles clip right onto the side. There's a designated spot for them. Now you can't mess this up. There's 2 designated holes on the paddle. Once you find the little pin on your Scout where the paddles go, you're just gonna slide it right through. There's a nut down here attached to a rope that you screw on to make sure this doesn't come off when you're on your maiden voyage. And then this isn't gonna be flopping around. You're gonna clip it into here. It takes quite a bit of force to plug into here, but once it is locked and loaded and it's not going anywhere. The paddles are collapsible, so they don't need to be transported in their 3-foot position. They can be broken down in half. Now, the next biggest thing that you would bring with you is your outboard motor and your tackle equipment. So if you have a small vehicle, might not be the best option for you, nor would the kayak be, unless you had roof racks on top or you were comfortable sliding some of the equipment in between your passenger seats. Depending on what motor you have, you gotta make sure you set it down correctly. Sometimes it'll be sitting on its left-hand side and other motors require it to lay on its right-hand side. Now, we do have one owner who owns a Prius. He also owns a Scout 365. I'll put up a little picture of the back of his vehicle, but he stores his Scout right in the back along with his motor off to his right hand side, and he's able to go to and from the water with ease. Takes him a couple minutes to set up the boat, and then he's out on the water. Because the Scout is able to be rolled up in a small boat, because the Scout is able to be rolled up in a small bag, you are able to put it in different places that you might not be able to take a kayak. So we've put the Scout boats in vans. We have other owners who have smaller vehicles. We have another owner who has a sedan, but he puts everything in his trunk. But it works great for him, and he pulls it right out. He backs right up to the launch, unloads everything, sets everything up, and he's off. Now, for the kayak, if you have a small car like a Prius, you can't really take a kayak with you unless you had a trailer or foam blocks from your local kayak store, and that will prevent the kayak from scratching your paint on the top of your car. Now, something I like between the kayak rather than the Scout is the Scout I use for longer trips and the kayak I use for shorter trips. I am a tall guy. I have a lot of back pain, so finding comfort is a little hard for me. The kayak, I like to spend about 2 to 3 hours max. If I'm gonna be out any longer on the water, I like to bring the boat, as I have a swivel seat and I can lay down in the boat comfortably. Yes, I can lay down in it.
Josh over here sleeping and he catches fish.
I'm comfortable and I can stretch out my back and I can relieve some of the pain I have. For shorter trips, the kayak's perfect. For longer trips, the Scout is perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and play transportation clips. This first one I'm gonna do is from Benji. Benji is all the way up in Newport. He is part of the Scout Inflatables team. He does a little bit of everything. I like his surf fishing videos, but he does fishing in the bay for spotted bay bass and other well-known species. Right now, I'm gonna switch gears. I'm gonna compare the 365 to the 2019 Outback. We'll start off with capacity. Both are comfortable for one person. Can you add an extra person on the Scout? Certainly. Can you add an extra person on here? Maybe a small child in the back and no fishing equipment? Maybe. Would it be comfortable? And not so much. Is it comfortable with 2 people on here? It's comfortable for smaller people. It's not so comfortable for someone like me who has daddy long legs that don't allow me to stretch out when there's a second person sitting right here in the middle. Launching through the surf. Taking the Outback through the surf, pretty simple. Obviously with anything, just wait until you're comfortable, hop in, and you can either paddle out or you can use the pedals. With the Scout, same thing applies, except you're not necessarily paddling. You're gonna wanna use your outboard instead. Now, on the kayak, when you're launching through the surf, if you flip, you got to be careful about all the hooks and fishing line and anything that could possibly wrap around you and hold you under. Now on the Scout, you still have the same thing, but you also have another danger. You have a running outboard. Always have your kill switch connected to you. Now, when your motor is idling, I recommend standing to the side of it as you have some protection in case something goes wrong. Me personally, I stand right behind it. Now, when you're launching through the surf, things are gonna get wet. Same with the kayak, so you're gonna wanna put stuff away, protected. Underneath the sleeve here, you can put your phone, you can put a box of tackle, you can put some food. Same thing with the kayak over here. You have a hatch designed for it. When you're launching through the surf, water will go over and it's not gonna get your gear inside wet. Same for the back, there's extra storage. Same thing over here. I usually have my gas can right here as my outboard sits right here on the transom. For here, I have my crate, tackle, water, and food, which sits back here. Now, when launching through the surf, I like to walk out waist deep. Hopping into the kayak is a little sketchy because it's wobbly. And in the past, I have overshot and I end up rolling in the surf and it's not fun. Now the Scout, it's a lot wider. It acts as a floating suction cup on the water. So I can comfortably hop onto the pontoon and the other side is not gonna lift out and flip like it does on the kayak. However, once you are in the Scout, all that water that was on your legs is now gonna be inside here. You do have a drain in the back, but it only works when you're moving full blast as the water is able to escape out the back. Now on the kayak, when you hop in and you're soaking wet, everything drains out. Now pretend both vessels are out in the water. We'll pick a location. We'll do La Jolla Shores, for example. La Jolla Shores has a marine protected area that lasts about a little more than half a mile. For me, in the kayak, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get out past the reserve. And I'm also pedaling and it gets a little tiring. Now for the Scout, we have a motor. So the motor is gonna be a lot more speed and you're gonna get out there a lot quicker. I can get out past the reserve with a 3.5, which pushes me about 7 miles an hour in about 5 minutes. Once out past the reserve, far away from shore in the ocean, you no longer have the wind protection, so it might be a little choppy out there. It gets a little hairy. Now the Scout, as I mentioned before, it acts as a suction cup on the water. So don't get me wrong, you'll move around a little bit, but it's not like the kayak where you're going back and forth and back and forth and it makes you a little nauseous, especially on a rougher day. Now on a rougher day, you might have occasional white caps, you'll have a lot of wind, you'll have a lot of water lapping the side of your kayak, getting you wet, and it's not very enjoyable. Now on the Scout, water will still be hitting the side, but it won't totally get you wet, and the water will run down the side. You still might get sprayed, but you're not gonna get wet like you would on a kayak. Here's another question I get asked. What about current? There's a lot of current on the water. You're always drifting if you want to stay on a spot easily. How do you go about doing that? So this applies for both the Scout and the kayak. If I'm fishing in the kelp, I will pull some kelp inside my vessel and it helps me stay in place. If I'm out rock fishing, I will use my pedals to slowly pedal and stay on spot. Now here, there's no pedals, but you have your outboard motor. So it'll be on idle and I'll always click it into forward or reverse depending on which way the swell is going and how I'm trying to stay on top of the fishing spot. Now, if you're fishing in the bay and there's no kelp near you, you can always bring yourself an anchor. You can use the 3-pronged one from Walmart or the mushroom anchor. Both work really well. Now, I wouldn't recommend using an anchor on the kayak, as if you have a lot of force, it'll start to pull you to one side. So if I have my anchor and it's on the bottom and I carabine it to the handle, the kayak is gonna be leaning on the left-hand side and it's gonna sort of tilt the kayak. It's a little hairy and it's uncomfortable. Now I have done it on the front. It's not ideal for me as I have to crawl all the way up to the front and unlatch it. Now on the Scout, when I have the mushroom anchor, it will be to the side and you won't have the downwards pulling on the right-hand side where the anchor is, but you will be moving back and forth as the swell is coming. Right, let's switch on to the pros and cons of a human-powered rather than a engine-powered. Engine-powered, you can go as far as it'll take you. If you run out of gas, you run out of gas. You'll have to use your paddles or you'll call for help. With the kayak, you can still go as far as you want. However, you lose stamina and you get tired. Outback can carry up to 425 pounds max. For the Scout 365, you can take up to 500 pounds as mentioned on our site, and it shows it right at the bottom of the transom. I've had around 600 pounds on the 365 and it's performed phenomenal. Now let's talk about fishing shallow water. Well, Josh, what's so great about fishing shallow water? Well, you have an outboard on the side. Here you have fins. Obviously the outboard and the fins, they can both lift up. What if you're fishing a rocky area? This is an inflatable, this is hard plastic. The kayak is not going to get beat up too badly by oysters or rock that you may hit. Now, don't get me wrong, you will make some pretty good divots in your kayak, as I already have. Right here, I grazed a nice oyster bed. Same with over here, coming in too hot on a bed of rocks, and your normal scratches from dragging it from point A to point B. Now, Josh, this is an inflatable boat. It's not smart to drag it over oysters, let alone rocks and anything sharp. No, you are totally correct. I would recommend you stay away from it. Have I gone and done it anyways? Yes, I have. Have I made a hole? Thankfully, not yet. Have I bumped into pilings at low tide where they have oysters and razor clams everywhere? Yes, I have. Have you put a hole in it? No, I have not. Let's check out the bottom of the boat here. On both Scouts, they all have 4 fins, 2 in the back and 2 in the front. These fins allow you to track well on the water when you're going full speed, as well as when you're dragging it on land. So when you're dragging your boat with all your gear inside, these are going to be rubbing against the concrete. It's going to save you from tearing up the pontoon part of your boat. If you don't feel comfortable dragging your boat, I recommend you make yourself a set of wheels. I made myself a set of wheels out of stroller wheels and a 2x4. I also added some kitchen cabinet handles, that way I can add a ratchet strap, and it straps onto the seat, making sure everything stays tight when I'm transporting it from the shore to the water. I do take these wheels through the sand. Now, unlike the Hobie wheels that are designed for sand, these guys sink in, so when I'm pulling really hard on the boat, sometimes the wheels would slip out when it wasn't strapped down. So now I've fixed that problem, and it still is a pain in the butt to drag it through this really soft sand because the wheels sink into about here, but I'm still able to get it to and from the water. I would like to talk about the stability test. I'm able to stand up comfortably in the 365 and cast without any concern about it being wobbly or the concern of falling in the water. Now, the kayak, I do not like to stand. I'm a tall person, so I am very top heavy, and even on a calm day, it's still very wobbly for me. Even in choppy conditions, I'm comfortable standing up and fishing from the 365 as well as the 430. With 2 people, you can also stand up. However, I'd recommend one person stands up at a time, as when 2 people stand up, one person leans one way, the other person leans the other way, and sometimes accidents do happen. So we are back at the boat ramp. We are cleaning up now. For the kayak, I would just take off my equipment and slide the kayak into the back of the tailgate. The Scout, I would take off my equipment and I will either roll it up and put it in the back of the vehicle, or I would put it inflated on the roof racks upside down. Now, 2 cons for both boats is whether you have a truck or you have a smaller car, both are going to be dirty after each trip. So unless you have a way to clean it off, or you're looking for something isn't so messy, just understand that both of these items here will bring a lot of sand and dirt into or near your vehicle. Those are the main key points for the difference between the 365 and the kayak. If you're transporting it in a vehicle or you're out on the water, how one works while standing up while one other doesn't. That about wraps it up for the comparison between the 365 and the Hobie Outback. I'm gonna go ahead and make my way over to the 430 and talk about that. I'm done for this topic. I might come back to this later at the end of the video. I'm not 100% sure yet, but if I missed anything that wasn't clarified or you have a question about that I didn't go over, please leave it down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Let's talk about the 430. Now, obviously this 430 looks a little different than the stuff you see on the website. That is because I spray painted it. I went in my own design. This was originally the blue color. I wanted a Rasta type effect and I like the way it came out. I did black, then we did some green, yellow, and red stripes. Obviously, spray paint does not last. So as you can see, if you look really closely, it's coming off, but you know, that's totally fine. It's an idea I wanted to try and I like how it came out. Now, there's a few different things on this that is not on the 365. The first thing we'll talk about is the transom. This transom is all replaced with aluminum. The reason for that is because I put a bigger outboard motor on than recommended. Max Scout Inflatables recommends is a 5 horsepower. Now we have plenty of other Scout Inflatable owners who put 6 HP outboard motors on theirs. I currently upgraded from a 3.5 and I now run a Yamaha 8 outboard motor. With 2 people, it takes me about 17 miles an hour on the water. With myself, I get up to 20. But it's really nice and I can get from point A to point B very quickly. Now some cons. The 365 does not have aluminum plates because I have not wanted to put a bigger outboard on it. But I made a video earlier of how you can. You're basically gonna remove the rod holders, you're gonna remove this bracket, you're gonna remove this, you're gonna fill it all up with waterproof sealant, and then you're gonna strap 2 plates to clamp together with a bunch of nuts and bolts, and then you're gonna screw this guy back on, you're gonna screw this side back on, and then it'll be rock solid and it won't peel out. The cons to having a aluminum reinforced transom compared to the standard one is that this has a drain. So when you're moving at full speed, you simply lift that up and the water drains out. With this one here, there is no drain, as you can see. You can kind of see some of the waterproof sealant that is seeping out at the bottom, but water pulls up in the back of my boat, so I have to take a manual pump and pump everything out. Another con about both Scout boats is, well, they're inflatable. So a lot of people get the idea that it's gonna pop easily. And when it does pop, everyone has the idea that it's like a balloon. You punch a hole in it and the whole thing explodes and it's totally flat. That is not the case. So like I mentioned before, there are 3 separate chambers on each boat. Pontoon, another chamber, another pontoon, which is also a single chamber. You fill this whole side up, you fill the floor up all the way, and you fill this one up all the way. Same thing applies to over here. Now when you do punch a hole into it, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. It's not gonna deflate like everyone thinks. Unless for some reason you decide to take a fillet knife and just stab it a whole bunch of times, you might have that issue. Now, the main way people put a hole in their boat is they either drop a fish on it or they get a hook stuck in it. I don't know how they get a hook stuck in it other than from fly fishing. I haven't heard of anyone getting a hook stuck in it from conventional rod and reel fishing, as the hooks they use are very big, unlike the fly fishing hooks that are a lot smaller. So they usually grab onto the really tiny divots in the pontoon. Now, when you do get a hole in your boat, like I mentioned before, it is not a deflation. Your pontoon is not gonna pop like, sorry, go this way. It's a lot more refreshing. Your pontoon is not going to pop like a balloon. It is not gonna go totally flat. You're gonna have a pin-sized hole from your hook or your fish spine, maybe even 3. It's part of fishing off an inflatable boat. Accidents do happen, but it's not the end of the world. You can continue to fish for your remaining time on the water. There was a time back in 2019, myself and a friend, we were fishing in the 365 model. It was a blue model. Caught a spotty, was releasing it back, and all face spines, there's like 3 of them, it all went on the left side of the pontoon. We fished the remaining 7 hours. We lost about 30% of air, so we still had 70%. Don't get me wrong, it was definitely a little uncomfortable after a few hours because you're sitting at an angle. We did not take on any water. When I got home, I took a bottle of soapy water. I filled up the pontoon to max, sprayed the soapy water on it. Where the bubbles came out is where the holes were. Dried it off, put a Sharpie marker, put a patch on it, let it sit for 72 hours, pumped it back up, and never had any problems. I'll actually play a video right now from my friend Ryan. He took his 365 Camo inflatable boat out and he deflated the pontoon completely.
Heavy seas, we'll see. I could see putting a brace underneath both sides to hold it up for heavy seas. But other than that, she works beautiful. See ya.
Third main challenge that I have is comfort and when I bring guests on board. So 365, the smallest version, this is 12 feet long. This is great for one person. You can bring an extra person, but if you're gonna bring an extra person, make sure your person is small so it's comfortable. There's also 3 little spaces you can put your seats. You have a seat here in the back, you have a seat here in the middle, and one at the very front. I've done this before, as well as a few other people, but you have a seat right here. One person sits here, one person sits here. Your legs don't sit up front. They're gonna be basically touching. You're gonna have your tackle and equipment, but it's a little fun way to putt around the harbor and do some fishing. For the 430, when I take 2 people, I sit here in the back and I have someone who sits here in the front. Now, there's a lot more leg room up here on the 430 compared to the 365. A pretty awesome thing about the Scout boats, like the kayak, you can customize it to your liking. On the kayak, I've taken apart the rail mounts and I've added different cubby compartments along the side. For here, I've added ruler on to the bar. I've added a swivel seat, which you've probably seen in some of my other videos, that'll lock into the oar locks and I can swivel around and it's really comfortable. You can also add your fishing equipment in crates. You can strap it down on the D-rings here on the sides or up front. We do have a few Facebook groups, so I recommend you check that out if you have any other questions or if you have ideas. I'm gonna go ahead and put up a couple videos and photos at the end of what other people have done to theirs in the Scout group. Jim Bixby is pretty stinking awesome. He made a bunch of awesome inventions. He created a anchor system that hooks to the front of your boat and you just unwind it and the anchor drops. And then when you're ready to move, you just spin it and it comes right back up and it's really stinking neat. Well, that about wraps up this video between the comparison of a Scout boat and a kayak. I used the 365, for example, as it had very similar qualities, with mainly being meant for one person, stability on the water, wheels for transportation to and from the beach, and everything else. Now the rain is coming back. As you can see, it's a lot darker than before. Before this video ends, I am gonna do a raw footage of me rolling up this boat to show you how easy it is. I'm gonna explain some tips. So for the Scout inflatable boats, you can take your floor out of the boat when you're rolling it up. It's optional. I personally like to keep mine inside the floor, so when I roll everything out, everything is all laid out. It just needs to be pumped up. When you are deflating the boats, there are little valves here on the side of the pontoon, as we showed before. There's a little button in here that releases the air. You're gonna push in and twist to the left or right. It'll be in a locked position where it'll be underneath the actual valve. Right now it's sticking out, so no air is coming out. You're gonna push in and turn to the right or left, and you'll know because obviously air will continue to come out. Once it's all deflated, I'll show you how to roll it up. All right, so it is flat for the most part. First thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna grab these handles, or you can grab the ropes. I prefer grabbing the handles, and you're gonna pull it as close together as you can. You basically want it to be touching. You can grab the ropes if you'd like to bring it in more. You have these guys, or sorry, you can't really see that because it's blocked by half the kayak. Basically the side will crinkle up and it's not really good when you roll it up. It stretches it and it's not really good for the boat. So I recommend just holding it in the handles and then pull it as closely together as you can. Now for the back end, you're simply just gonna push straight down like that. For these pontoons here, you're gonna fold into each other. So one is going in like that. The other one folds right over itself. And I'm gonna scoot back just a little bit so you can see. But as you roll this up, you're gonna continue to scoot these guys towards you. So, right there, we're gonna move this closer. Obviously, if you can't get it touching, that's totally okay. It does not have to be perfect. Move it closer. And so forth. Now, once all said and done, the boat is nice and rolled up. You can put this in a bag, or we have little strap overs. One goes underneath, straps over to the side. The other one comes from the other side and clips over. It's the little bag you just lift up and carry over your shoulders, or you can bear hug it like I like to do. I'm gonna go ahead and take the other boat down. I'll speed up the video for you, and then I'll show you where everything stores. All right, here we go. This is the 365 and this is the 430. Now you might be able to tell just from the video, but this one is rolled up a lot thinner than this one is. And oh man, what perfect timing. It's starting to rain. I'm gonna go ahead and set you up on the little stand there. I'm gonna show you how the boats sit in, and hopefully I can get this away before the rain starts really coming down. All right, first boat is in. Slides in like that. Third boat in, just like that. Tarp goes over. Oh, just in time for the rain. As you can see, I got done just in the nick of time. It's starting to rain. I'm gonna put up the kayak later. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, give me a comment down below. I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. Have a happy Christmas Eve.